I'd like to introduce ourselves. My name is Alex Bergin. This is Katja Bergin. We are cousins and co-owners of a clinic up in Barrie called Bergin Motion. We treat a wide range of different clients, everything from ABIs to orthopedic injuries. And we're going to talk today a little bit about the difference between sort of neurological approach to physiotherapy, which would include sort of that ABI population, and more of a general physiotherapy we think about with ankle sprains and things like that. So just a little bit about us.
Sorry.
Bear with us.
We might have some tech issues as we go along, but as Alex mentioned, my name is Katja. If you guys can see in the photo, that's me and that's my dog. He is actually kind of our clinic dog, so he comes to work with me a lot. So I thought it'd be nice to put a photo of him in there because everyone loves dogs. I am, alongside Alex, a registered physiotherapist. I graduated my undergrad from the University of Toronto with a bachelor's of kinesiology in 2013. And then I graduated my master's of physiotherapy from Oxford Brookes University. And as you'll probably hear Alex mention, we both went to school together for university. Since graduating, I work with a wide range of people, from neurological conditions to orthopedic injuries, but I've specialized in pelvic floor physiotherapy. And I usually work with people who have anything from incontinence to pregnancy to pelvic pain. So it's kind of a wide range of people, but kind of specializing in that pelvic floor area. A little bit about what I like to do in my spare time. As I mentioned, I like to hang out with my dog Link. I like to stay active. We do a lot of workouts at the clinic, so we spend a lot of time here after work doing team workouts together. I like to read, spend time with my friends' family, and just spend time outdoors. Winter, summer, doesn't matter. I like to do them all.
And there we go. And I'm Alex. That's my picture there. I'm also a registered physiotherapist. I am trained in NDT, which is a neurodevelopment technique. Essentially, it is a type of physio that specializes with neurological conditions. So I do have a special interest in traumatic brain injuries and strokes and spinal cord populations. But I also do treat a lot of clients with multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's and a whole sort of array of different conditions. That's sort of my love and my passion. As Katja mentioned, we own Bergin Motion up in Barrie, and we've spent lots of time together, going to school together. And again, we spend a lot of time in the clinic together doing activities, and my passions are sports and watching sports. And as you will see me sipping away on my coffee here, coffee is another passion. So here we are. We're going to talk a little bit about what is neurophysiotherapy, who does it benefit, who is it for, and will it help me? Is it something that fits for you? And hopefully the goal of this presentation is to give you a bit more information about neurophysiotherapy and if it's something that might be beneficial for your specific condition.
So first, what we'll talk about is different areas of physiotherapy, because physio is a bit of a broad term, and anyone and everyone can benefit from physiotherapy depending on what your injury or your need might be. When you graduate from school, as Alex and I both did, you sort of graduate, everyone graduates, regardless of what school you went to, with the same kind of basic training in physiotherapy. And really the big learning happens after school in terms of specialties. So a lot of people will while they go through school and they kind of figure out what they like to do, they'll decide afterwards, okay, I want to become a neurophysio, or I, like myself, I became a pelvic physio, or you kind of want to dabble in lots of different things, but you generally do some training outside of your basic training after school. So just a little bit of a list of the main areas of physio. So orthopedic physiotherapy is kind of your general, more widely known physio. So like Alex mentioned earlier, something like an ankle sprain or a wrist sprain or low back pain, general low back pain if you sit a lot, that kind of physio is sort of the more widely known type of physio. Neurological physio is anybody that Alex was mentioning that he likes to treat. So spinal cord injuries, brain injuries, strokes, MS, What else am I missing?
There's also
Parkinson's. I mean, you could list a whole bunch of any kind of neurological condition would be under that neurophysiotherapy branch. And then there's other kind of more niche specific ones, such as vestibular physiotherapy, which a lot of, I would say, neurophysios tend to have a bit of. Alex does vestibular physiotherapy as well, because that can be anybody who's struggling with vertigo after a possible concussion or a brain injury. And then sports injuries is another big one. So anybody who's been injured in a sport, ACL tears, ankle sprains, all that kind of stuff. Pediatric physio would be your general physio for kids, and that's a specialty in itself because kids are very different than adults. And then you can break that down in kids with neurological conditions. There would generally be a pediatric physio for those kids. Geriatrics would be the elderly population, and there's different kind of physios and clinics that tend to treat the older populations. Cardiorespiratory, anything to do with the heart and lungs, and that's a lot of exercise-based physio. And then pelvic floor physiotherapy, which is again what I specialize in, dealing with anybody with pelvic floor related symptoms or issues, and that can be in orthopedic populations, neuro populations. Lots of people with spinal cord injuries or brain injuries struggle with things like incontinence, so I tend to see those people as well.
Okay, and we're just going to quickly overview what sort of a general physio and orthopedic physio does. This is everything from sprains and strains, fractures, pain conditions, arthritis, sports injuries. It's what a lot of people think about when they hear physio. It is the sort of more common type of physio. Treatments can include using modalities like ultrasound, doing different exercises, some massage, some stretching, some mobilization. There's a lot of different treatment techniques, but orthopedic physio is the one that's often referred to as the more common type of physio. And we're going to talk a little bit more about neurophysio, which is a bit different, a bit more specialized.
Okay, so what conditions, and we mentioned a few of them. There might be a bit of overlap as we're chatting because we a lot of different areas of physio overlap with each other, but what conditions are generally treated by neurophysiotherapists?
Sorry, bear with us a second. I'm just going to reset things just so we can see our whole screen. There we go. Okay. So some of the conditions, again, we've mentioned. Some of the more common ones we see are acquired or traumatic brain injuries, strokes, which can also fit into those categories, spinal cord injuries, which again, there's multiple different types of that, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, ALS. So there are a number of them. Some are more common than others, but in neurophysio, we'll typically sort of feel comfortable treating the bulk of those. And again, one of the things we want to stress today is if you're looking to see a neurophysio, we want to make sure that they are sort of comfortable treating your given injury or your given condition.
Oh, we might have some much to click.
Okay. Sorry, more people just try to come in. Okay.
We might be having some tech issues, but we'll go with it.
Trying to just admit someone into the. I think we've got them in. Okay.
Cool. Okay. So some of you might relate to some of these common symptoms, but this is generally what we see in clinic with anybody with an ABI, some common symptoms following an ABI. So a big one, we'll kind of work our way down the body, but headaches and dizziness is a really, really, really common one. Balance impairments and difficulties with balance, whether that's due to weakness or that's due to the brain kind of not sending those neural signals down to the muscles. Walking difficulties, so again, that can be due to weakness or it can be due to tension in the muscle that's restricting the joints from moving. One-sided neglect or hemi-neglect is another big one where the individual has one affected side that they tend to neglect. So they tend to overuse one side, which then can create balance impairments, or it can create more weakness on that one side if we're not using it properly. Sensation issues where Again, commonly it's with ABIs, it's one-sided, where they tend to not be able to feel certain areas of their body, and that can lead to having falls risks or different issues throughout the day. High or low tone or tightness in the body, or what's commonly called spasticity. So some people get where the muscles become really, really, really tight and they can't let them go. So certain muscles, your flexor muscles, what they're called, tend to get really tight. And then your extensor muscles tend to get weak because those muscles are overworking and the opposing muscle struggles to work. Sometimes you see low tone as well, where the person doesn't have the proper contractibility of the muscle, and then the muscle can't work properly. Fatigue or deconditioning is another really, really big one that we work with in the clinic. And that can be managed through taking breaks throughout the session or making sure we ask the person if they're feeling fatigued. But generally exercise and physio is a really good way to overcome that fatigue and deconditioning, just because as we get stronger, as we start to use each side more appropriately, that fatigue tends to dissipate. Muscular weakness, kind of mentioned that one already, but that generally happens on one side, but it can also very commonly be both sides as well. Loss of motor control, again, that has to do with the muscles as well, where some people, you hear fine motor control, where they struggle to maybe write with their dominant hand, or they struggle to pick something up and put it somewhere else, those kind of fine motor skills with their hands. And if anyone sort of experiences anything else that they want to shout out and mention that we haven't mentioned, there's tons of other things that people can experience, because every ABI is very different, and there's tons of variety with every ABI. So you guys might be experiencing something that we haven't mentioned, but is there anything else?
No, I mean, everybody kind of has different symptoms, and what you might feel might be different than somebody else. And the goal as a neurophysio is to try and treat whatever sort of symptom the individual is dealing with. Okay, so let's talk about neurophysio, and we have a lovely picture here of a bridge and a client working their muscles. But with neurophysio, how does it work? Brains and nerves are changeable, and you've probably heard the term neuroplasticity. Things can change, things can improve. Movement patterns can change. Physios can guide clients to help rediscover movement patterns that are lost with injury. So after an injury, sometimes we're not able to function the same way. And through different treatment techniques, we can try and rediscover those patterns and sort of relearn how to move again. Again, sometimes it takes time and it's a challenge, but there can always be improvement in some direction. And one of the important points to think about is progress can occur at any point. Regardless of how far along you are in your journey, there can still be changes. Even if those are something as simple as improving your balance or improving your conditioning, even if you're several years post-injury, continuing to address it and continue to work on it can be beneficial.
So what are some of the areas of physical function addressed in neurophysio? So again, everything we're talking about, we might not have listed. I just want to make sure
we have a
question.
We have a question. I'm going to try and, sorry, we're going to try and access our chat here.
Oh, I was just going to talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
Just a question for Alex. I know you're at a neuro rehabilitation. I just wanted to know, you deal like with the physical aspect of the body. What about the brains itself, like the cognitive part? Do you do anything with it? Like any training, like with the eyes, the brain?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, there is a fair amount of work that I'll do with individuals in terms of like visual training, working on the visual system as well as the vestibular system, the balance systems. But there are a whole other array of practitioners that will further treat the cognitive aspect as well. Everything from an occupational therapist to vision therapy, social work, all these different, speech therapy is another good one. There's lots of different sort of practitioners that will also work on that. But anytime in physio sessions we're working on something physical, there's a cognitive component. We're doing that movement, but we have to think about it. So we're developing sort of that cognitive improvement, if that makes sense. Does that sort of answer your question?
So like in your clinic, do you have those professionals who deal with that aspect of it? Or do you refer clients like to other individuals?
So in our clinic, we do have occupational therapists that work with us. But if it's somebody in need of speech therapy, we don't have a speech therapist here at the clinic, but we'll refer out. We have a few great ones that we work with, or vision therapists that we'll often refer out, and we work closely with them because obviously addressing these issues it's a team, right? It's not just one person, and I'm sure
Exactly. And especially when it comes to brain injury, you know, the brain rehab is very important, you know, the eyes, the vestibular system, the whole works like go together, you know, to get
100%. And it can't just be sort of a one-sided approach. It has to be sort of multifactorial in terms of the areas that are being addressed, right? I mean, we find the best success happens when there's a multidisciplinary approach, meaning that there's lots of team members. There's everybody working together. So unfortunately, it's not always the case, but we find the best success happens when there's lots of people involved and lots of sort of people specialized in different areas and can kind of work on that.
And we really, a lot of the times, if we're working with a client who has different members of their team that aren't necessarily within our clinic, we sometimes have team meetings with them where we all kind of discuss the plan of care for that client, and we just really make sure we are constantly emailing or calling to kind of update them on our end, and then we hear what they're working on. So then that way you can kind of make things go in parallel with each other in terms of both the rehabs, because they all sort of mesh together in the end.
Yeah, that's nice to know. Thank you very much.
No worries.
No problem. I think we have another question coming in there.
Feel free to talk away, or you can write your question.
Hi there.
Hi.
My name is Michelle, and I love this topic. I just only found this session 10 minutes ago.
Oh, well, welcome.
Thank you. So, you know, I'm having this issue where I have just discovered that I didn't know that nerve damage actually gets worse. And this was one of the things that kind of arose in my accident a couple years back, but now it's very intensified, right? So it was probably there, it was there all along, but it just out of nowhere. So what the difficulty I'm finding is around like service providers. It's interesting that you said that you will work together with even other people who are not part of your clinic. And with that, do you have to like request that the client have the insurance company cover that, or how is that covered? Because that's one part of my question. And then the other part of that is, for me, because I'm working with practitioners who are really just working on my knee issue, my concussion, post-concussion, right? Throwing the nerve issue into this, and it's very intense, I think it's confusing to some practitioners, regardless of, you know, where they're at, whether it's like the brain injury clinic or my physiotherapist, because I think in reality, some people don't know how to deal with it and really don't know what to say, right? So it kind of puts it back on me, which is fine. I have to figure this out. And I was just finished a session this morning and somebody said, it keeps referring to my knee. And I say, it's not my knee, it's my nerves in my leg. It's like, it's a nerve, right? So again, she does know how to deal with it. So, right. So any recommendations around that? Because I really want to make sure that I'm heard and not just redirected because somebody doesn't know what to do about it or dismisses it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to answer your second question first. And I think the hardest thing is trying to find a practitioner who's kind of looking at you as a whole person and not just a body part.
Okay.
That can be challenging. I mean, like anything, you need to find the right fit, right? Someone who is sort of comfortable treating all elements of you might be tricky, but if you're having someone treat your knee, recognizing that there's sort of a complexity to you and that there is multiple other injuries, whether it's the concussion or the nerve damage as well.
And that becomes tricky when there's both that, what we were kind of talking about, the orthopedic component, where there might be some pain in your joints or muscles, but then there's also that neurological component as well. And if they're not super comfortable treating the neurological aspect, then that's where it might get a bit tricky for them. So if, like Alex said, finding the right fit of physio might be the play.
One of the benefits we have in our clinic is we have some orthopedic physios as well. So I might treat sort of the neurological side of things. And then that client or individual can also see one of our orthopedic or knee specialist person. And then I can chat with them and they can chat with me and we can kind of be on the same page. But I mean, unfortunately, the reality is it's tough to find that sort of one person that fits exactly what you need. Sometimes it's a little bit of playing around and just in communicating to your whole team of, hey, this is what I'm working on with my other person, or this is what I need to have looked at here. And that can be challenging, and kind of almost leads us into that first question of like, how do you get the team members to communicate? And sometimes the answer is it's tricky. In terms of like, I know you're asking about is insurance covered? Not always, not often. I mean, sometimes we just have to try and communicate with the other practitioners, and it's not always a perfect situation. We try and do what we can because some practitioners are kind of pretty isolated and will treat to themselves, but others are more open and receptive to communicating with us. But it's a challenge for sure, 100%.
Much that helps. And I like the part about just getting somebody to recognize you're not just one part, like just treat you as a whole. And finding, I know it is definitely true. It is many practitioners working together, but I like that working together is the key, or just having a meeting. I'll try to organize that. Thank you.
And again, yes, we recognize that's challenging. Practitioners are busy, they're seeing other clients, and that's not always an option. But even if it's something simple like having one practitioner writing a brief letter and providing it to that other practitioner, or taking pictures of what you're doing in one session to share with another practitioner, so they can at least be on the same page or something. That's stuff I've used before. Or like videoing as part of a session to show your OT, hey, what am I doing in physio? That might be something that's an option as well.
And I think just going off of what Alex said too, it's also on the onus of the practitioner to be honest with themselves and say, hey, this is outside of my wheelhouse. I'm not 100% sure how to treat this. Let's refer on to maybe a different practitioner or somebody else that can kind of best treat you. So that might be a conversation to definitely have with them.
I'm going to actually take all of your suggestions and use it. I'm going to book an appointment. Actually, I'm going to see if I can book all of them in one appointment, because many of them are on Zoom, and see if I can just make that happen for next month. So I can sit in a session where they can talk and everybody gets paid for the session. So it shouldn't be an issue. I'll try that.
That's a good idea.
Great idea.
Yeah.
That works. Okay, thanks for the question. Those are great, and that's awesome. We appreciate it.
If anyone else has any other questions, just jump in as we go along.
And even if you want to, like, if there's other questions you think of at the end, we're happy to go through a few more too. But yeah, jump in if you need to.
We'll have some time for questions at the end, but okay, so just going back to this, but we're going to talk about what are some of the areas of physical function addressed in neurophysiotherapy.
And this will not cover everything, but this is some of the things we look at sort of primarily in terms of a neurophysio session. Posture, it's a huge one. We can see this cat here doesn't have the best posture. So one of the biggest things we look at when we're seeing someone is how's posture and what kind of changes can we make. There may be some neurological injuries and muscle loss, but we do our best to try and see if we can provide some symmetry and make things as good as possible. So it's really important for decreasing muscle imbalances. It can be helpful for pain. Sometimes poor posture, or oftentimes poor posture, contributes to pain. It is a key. Yeah, we've got to fix our posture as we're talking here. It's a key part of physio. Regardless of an injury, we pretty much everyone I see in a day, we are working on some, element of posture, and it's so important. It's also helpful for mobility, and the reality is every single person can work on their posture. And I'm sure all of you just sat up a little bit more as we said the word posture, and you're fixing your shoulders and trying to stay a little bit more upright. That's posture. It's so important. We work on it all the time.
Okay, mobility is another huge one. A lot of the times we were talking about earlier on when we were talking about some of the symptoms that might happen after an ABI. Tension in the muscles is a big one. So then your mobility tends to decrease and joints get tight, muscles get tight. So physiotherapy treatment can help improve your functional mobility. So by functional mobility, we mean basically the stuff you do during the day, right? So picking something up off the floor or grabbing a cup out of the cupboard, or just those types of functional movements, that ability to move, bend, and stretch can all be improved through physiotherapy treatment. And often, as I mentioned, after an ABI, there is some type of limitation in the mobility. Sometimes it can be both sides, sometimes it can be one side. And it can happen in any joint from your neck, back, shoulders, elbows, hands, hips, knees, ankles, and feet. So we look at it all. I even have a client with a brain injury who suffers from a lot of tension in her left side of her face. So we work on starting to move her jaw and move her eyes and move her eyebrows. So it can even be facial mobility as well. And that maintaining that proper mobility is essential to movement and performing activities of daily living. And that mobility goes back into posture, right? So if our back is stiff, then our posture is going to start to suffer from it. So the two kind of go hand in hand as well.
And this one is probably one that you've all thought about. In neurophysiotherapy sessions, we work on gait, and gait is always a different term. Some people are not necessarily walking around as they were before. Sometimes we're using assistive devices. Sometimes there's wheelchairs. We're looking at gait as any sort of movement in a direction. I mean, we've got a few pictures here that really kind of show different variations of gait. But I'm sure some of you have noticed some differences in your walking patterns following your injury, but it's something we work on all the time. Physiotherapy treatment can improve your functional ability by assisting the way you walk or move. It's maybe not always going to go back to perfect or the exact way you walked before, but within physio, we are always trying to improve that ability to move. Physio treatment may also involve working on some exercises to improve your standing balance. We'll talk about balance a little bit more. There might be some strengthening, and we use a variety of different things from parallel bars to canes and poles and other gait re-education tools to help try and improve that. We're just gonna.
Sorry, we're just trying to let someone in, but I think they got admitted.
I think they're in. Welcome.
Okay. So this is a lovely picture of me and Alex, if you didn't recognize us with our masks on. This is obviously a very during the height of COVID when we took this photo, and before our clinic had a lot of equipment. It looks a little bit different now, but so balance is a big issue for many people with ABIs. And it can be severely impacted or mildly impacted, but both kind of take a toll on people, right? So physiotherapy treatment may try to improve your statics, which is your standing balance, or dynamic balance, which is your movement balance. So you can kind of see in that photo that would sort of be considered, I mean, maybe a bit of, you could argue both, but maybe static balance. And then movement balance would be something like balance when walking or balance when picking up an item off the floor. It's a huge component to our daily life. And in a lot of stuff we do, we have to have balance, especially because we're constantly switching feet. We're constantly on one foot. So to decrease risk of falls, which is always often a goal, I think, of a lot of people with ABIs, that decreasing that risk of falling or decreasing a risk of hitting their head again, we want to make sure that that balance is a key component of our physio sessions. Yeah, and then we can kind of slowly progress the balance exercises as we move along, and then make them more functional to somebody's goal. So somebody's goal might be, I want to golf again, but because of the swing and the movement of the swing, they lose their balance when they swing. So kind of doing exercises that move them towards that goal of golfing again, that are very specific to golf, and getting back that movement is one of the things we always tend to focus on.
So we're going to look at the next part, strength and endurance training. If you've done some physio in the past, you've probably seen variations of some strength or endurance training. That can use everything from body weights to cables, dumbbells, barbells. When you think of a gym, kind of anything in a gym facility is often used. I'm sure you've seen bands used, all kinds of different things. In terms of endurance, or often referred to as cardiovascular training, in physio, we use a lot of stationary bikes, treadmills, ellipticals, rowing machines. I don't know if you've all seen a ski ergometer. It's kind of like a cross-country ski thing, or a hand crank, kind of goes around in a circle. If you have challenges using your legs, it's a good way to kind of work on your upper body strengthening and cardiovascular abilities. And then everything from just walking on the ground or going up and down stairs. These are all things we use in physio to help with improving endurance. I'm sure a lot of you have struggled with deconditioning or feeling tired, and the more we work on this, hopefully there can be improvement.
Okay, so this is a pretty common question that we usually get. How long are physio appointments, or how long is an expected appointment? So neurophysios tend to have a bit longer of a session than, say, maybe an orthophysio. So a neuro session tends to be anywhere from 45 minutes to 1.5 hours. I would say the average is an hour.
Yeah, I normally have an hour appointments. I don't really have anything much shorter than that. It's just, yeah.
It just tends to work on in the session. So you kind of need that hour time slot, especially if you're working on maybe some stretching and mobility to start, loosening up any tight muscles. And then you kind of get into the exercise, and then you might need to do some cool down stuff at the end. Like that hour goes by really quickly. So sometimes even up to an hour and a half is necessary. But and then compared to an ortho appointment where, say, somebody's coming in for an ankle sprain, tends to be a little bit shorter, 20 to 30 minutes. Our clinic usually does 30-minute appointments, especially by the time you kind of chat with the person and start treating them. 30 minutes tends to be the need for the length of those appointments. Yeah, and the neuro sessions tend to just be longer because of the complexity of the injuries. There's more components to be addressed than just, say, an ankle sprain for somebody that's coming in for an ortho injury. And we've already mentioned all the different areas that would be worked on.
Yeah. Just gonna get another little chat. Just gonna see if I can open that for a second.
Okay, so we're just gonna answer a couple questions here that are in the chat. I don't know if you guys can see that on our screen, but
we'll read it out. I don't know if you can see that. Do you work on TMJ? One of the things we're lucky to have a physio here who is sort of a specialist with TMJ dysfunction. So TMJ is sort of like an area of the jaw that sometimes can be problematic, and we have a physio who specializes in that. And the next question is, your office is in Barrie, which is too far for me. Do you have a referral for Toronto? There are lots of great clinics, and maybe we'll send a message out later of some clinics that we know pretty well.
We'll also have our emails at I think in the last slide, we have our contact information. If you email one of us, we can send you back some options, just so that way you can kind of get the actual website for those clinics and the contact information. Because
Toronto's also pretty big, so.
But we definitely know a couple clinics in that area.
Okay, we're gonna keep.
We might have to exit that. Hold on one second.
Sorry, bear with our tech stuff. Oh, Robin, you have a question?
You can.
Yeah, for some reason I can't chat. Is it possible to stop recording while I ask my question?
That is a great question. I don't know if
we don't know how to do that.
I don't know if we have access to that.
Sorry. I'm just gonna try and stop recording just a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, because I don't know how to figure that out.
Pause record.
We're gonna keep rolling along. We're mindful of time, but we're gonna keep. We want to go through this one?
Sure. Okay. So barriers are a big issue for some people in terms of different, there's tons of different barriers that can come up when accessing physio or approaching physio. So anxiety and fear is a big one that we see. Physio can sometimes seem scary, especially because a lot of the times physios make you exercise, and some people might not like to exercise, or they have a fear about exercising. Sometimes it can create pain. So there's like different ways that we tend to deal with the anxiety and fear surrounding that. So support workers and family members are always welcome. We encourage people to bring their support workers and family members, especially because they can kind of take some of the approaches that we're working on and take them home and work on them with you as well. And then finding a physio, we've touched on this a little bit with some of the questions, but finding a physio you're comfortable with and that you find is helping you is a really, really big one. And sometimes it's not wrong to say, my physio is not working out for me, I need to kind of find somebody else, and that's totally fine. Fatigue and energy levels, as I mentioned before, is a bit of a barrier. So the way we deal with that is through progressive exercise programs. Rest and breaks are encouraged. We always ask people if they need water or just want to take a second, just to manage that fatigue throughout the entire session, so we're not getting too tired by the end. Headaches and dizziness. So sometimes the way we deal with this is through different hands-on or manual treatment. So maybe instead of doing exercise that day, we work on your neck and try to decrease some of the tension that's going to your head to help with your headache. And then also doing sort of those slower progressive exercise programs to manage fatigue and manage blood flow to the brain. Transportation can be a big one, getting to and from the clinics. So I would always ask if this is ever a barrier for you or a barrier for someone you know. A lot of neurophysios will offer in-home treatments to accommodate this barrier. So we come to you. We tend to get quite creative in being able to use whatever you have in your home for, whether it's your stairs or your desks or chairs or couches. We tend to use anything and everything for exercise. We can kind of come up with lots of different stuff. We're pretty creative. And then other transit options also exist: Wheel-Trans, Uber, taxi. I know there's some financial barriers that come with that, but there's usually some funded ones as well. Accessibility, usually, so if you ever use like a walker or wheelchair, any kind of gait aid, most, if not all, should be. Most neuroclinics
They all should be.
Yeah.
Every place should be.
Should be, yeah, but not always. But if you're a neuroclinic, it should be most of the time fully accessible. What that means: accessible washrooms, accessible doors, ramps to get up onto the curb, all that kind of stuff should be available to you. And mood, sometimes people come in with a lower mood. We try to keep it light and fun, and
We try and not make it horrible. It's kind of our general goal.
we try to have fun with our clients. We're usually always laughing in the clinic.
Okay. So just a quick overview of what you'd expect in an average neurophysio session. I'm sure some of you have been to a few, but just wanted to go through it. Typically sessions are goal-oriented and individualized. They're kind of geared towards working towards what you want to get back to or what you enjoy. We don't just sort of have a formula or protocol. We're like, okay, we have to do this because we're on day 1 or day 2. We're working towards sort of what you would like to improve, because no condition is the same, no brain injury is the same, so therefore no treatment should be the same. In neurophysio sessions, we do ask for some hard work from people. Physio sessions are very active. It's not a lot of just laying down and hoping things get better. It is a lot of work. And sessions are really aimed at getting you physically back to what you like doing in whatever respect that is. I mean, sometimes we have goals and we're not always able to get right there, but we sort of strive to get as close as possible.
Okay, so our general takeaway messages from this is, first question is physiotherapy for me. I mean, if you've had anything that we've listed above, regardless of how long ago your injury was, physio is likely for you. And we don't just say that because we are physios. Like, generally physio can be helpful for anyone. Ask questions when looking into a physio. Ask what type of clients they treat, what kind of conditions they treat, if they're comfortable treating what you have. Sometimes we get a phone call to the clinic and somebody will say, I have this, this, and this going on. And then the admin will get one of us to call them back. That tends to kind of align with whatever they're coming in for, to make them feel a bit more comfortable that we do have the expertise and the knowledge and to treat what conditions you have. And if we don't, we refer on, right? So
there are lots of fantastic physios that don't feel comfortable treating the ABI population. I know lots of great physios that say, you know what, I'm not an expert in that field, and that's good that they say that. So make sure you ask questions when you're calling a clinic.
Yeah, and ask about their accessibility, mobility limitations of the facility. Like we said, if it is a neuro specialty clinic and they treat neuro populations, they very much should be accessible. I actually don't know of any that aren't, but always ask those questions just to make sure. Physio can be fun and helpful regardless of how far along you are. It's always goal oriented, so we always ask what people like to do. We always do the exercises that lead towards those goals. And yeah, it's important to find the clinic and the physio that works for you.
It's got to be the right fit.
And you can always change, right? We've talked about this with some of the questions. If it's not working for you, sometimes it's time to move on to a different one.
That's not a bad thing.
No. Or if it's to a physio in the same clinic, different physio in the same clinic. Sometimes it's the job and responsibility of the physio to recognize when they're no longer getting somewhere with you and that just need a second pair of eyes, and that can just make all the difference in the world, really. Okay.